realized that there's a tendency in our journalism profession to just scratch the surface. We are not doing justice to the stories that we write. We are not doing justice to our writers. I remember the facilitator, Mr. Lofty, actually mentioned that we are doing what he called one-night stands, with our readers, where you just write a story, you don't follow it up, you leave people hanging, they don't know what happened next. So I learned that it's so important that we become the voice of our society, because if we do not do that, nobody else can do it. I learned that there's a lot happening in political parties, in companies, in non-governmental organizations, and we have to kind of dig and come up with stories that can also solve some problems that are bedeviling our organizations. I also learned the importance of being ethical, gathering all the facts and making sure that all the information gathered is authentic, to avoid litigation and lawsuits against our media houses. I also learned that it is important to have the qualities of an investigative journalist, where you have to be very patient. You don't have to rush to write stories without getting the facts right. You have to have the zeal to get down to the bottom of stories, and have the courage to confront people and do the stories up to the end. On the issue of ethics, I also learned that it was actually another important topic that was touched. I learned that it's important to be truthful and never use unethical tactics to get information. We were also actually put into groups where we came up with very interesting stories that can be done as investigative stories that can be followed up. And I can actually confirm that as I'm speaking right now, those stories are actually being done in our newsrooms. These stories are stories that have to do with our local authorities, stories that have to do with our politics in Zimbabwe, and stories that have to do with a whole lot of influential organizations that we have in the country. The challenges that we have here in Zimbabwe in terms of doing investigative journalism is that most of our media houses, or actually we have just a handful of media houses that have investigative desks in the country. Basically because we do not have, most of our organizations don't have funding, because such stories need a lot of money, they need a lot of resources, and they need a lot of time. They're not stories that can be done in a day, so they need a lot of money. And my suggestion and recommendation is that if you could have such desks being funded, by organizations that can afford to fund them, so that we can have better stories, that have better content, in our media houses. I think that would be a positive development. I think that's all. Thank you.